Good morning, all. Oh, blimey, that's nice loud. Good morning. Thank you for joining us in the early start. So I'm Steve Alton from the BII. I have the pleasure of running this panel around the use of technology to transform businesses. I think we all recognise right now, although footfall broadly in the industry, we're seeing a little bit of growth, but it's a very mixed picture. But we know how tough it is with all the costs that we're facing to actually make a profit to the bottom line. So it's probably never been more important to use smart processes, technology, new ways of working to try and get more customers in and make us a lot leaner than we've ever been. So I've got a fantastic panel. So Mark Robson from New Dawn Pub Company, the founder of that company, also happens to be the BII chair. So thank you, Mark, as a successful multiple operator. And Mark will explain more about that as he talks about his approach. We've got, again, our award-winning Mark Holden from Cornwall. So he's got, again, a set of some fantastic pubs down there in Cornwall collection, which you'll talk about, and Tom Brady from Gig Realm. So Gig Realm do a fantastic job bringing completely new experiences to pubs and, again, growing essential revenues right now. So kicking off, so Mark, we're in this technology area, and we see these amazing solutions around, but how do you approach technology when there's so many options and this plethora of solutions? How do you start? What are you trying to fix? How do you get the team involved and really make sure it makes a difference?
Yeah, that's a good question. I suppose fundamentally you have to identify what the issue is. What's the problem? What is it that you're trying to solve? And probably most things boil down to, are you improving the customer journey, the customer experience, or are you improving efficiency? That's probably where it comes down to. And I think from our point of view, it's identifying the need first and then trying to find the right solution that plugs into that need. As you said, there's a lot of solutions out there, so it's not straightforward. And certainly in my experience, they interface and integrate with each other in many different ways. So just finding a single solution to a single need it's not that simple anymore. It was probably 10 years ago. Actually, you're generally looking at a suite of needs and then a suite of solutions.
Yeah. So looking at the approach you've taken, are there one or two areas that this has had the biggest impact on in terms of implementing some smart technology? Because I know you've looked at and do a number of things across the business, but what's really worked? Because these guys are all facing this choice, where do you start? But what has worked, and probably as importantly, what have you looked at that maybe hasn't?
Yeah, look, I think for us, there's probably two things I'd jump on. One that's customer facing, one that's more about efficiency. The one that I've always gone on about is customer loyalty, and we've moved to an app-based system on there now. It's not perfect, but gives us a lot more functionality. I think customers find it a lot more user friendly. And we get a lot more use out of it. Customers use it a lot more, and we can do things really quickly on it, and that drives repeat business and loyalty. And we're putting a lot of time and effort into that. And on the flip side, just from an efficiency point of view, I know Mark's a real energy champion, but I've kind of shouted the corner for voltage management systems over the last 6 months or so, which is something that we put in across our pubs. And it saved us an enormous amount of money, circa about 15% on average on our electricity bills across the group, which is, in the current climate, translates into big bucks. So again, they both took a lot of research and understanding, and they weren't necessarily pain-free processes of putting them in, but they've definitely helped.
So Mark, as Mark said, sustainability, energy right now, and it's bigger than rent and rates combined. It's such a fundamental challenge. I know that you're really tackling it. So how have you used technology? As importantly, have you got your team involved with that as well?
I think for us, we're right in the middle of it. So we're 11 days away from renewing our energy contracts. And, I've got sweat pouring down my face like every single day, just in fear for what is coming. But we knew it was coming. So we've been working on lots of things probably since 2018, 2019. I'm the techie part of the business. I love, this stand is this showroom's all about me, and I can probably get lost and get very carried away and very excited. So I have to rely on a lot of my team to hold me back from things. But the energy side is accessibility to information, and accessibility to data is absolutely key. On the basics of energy companies, we've all probably got online portals now, and kind of knowing where that information is, how you access it, how you can pull that data down, and how you can share that with your team, I think is really important. We've recently done a 42-panel installation, solar panel installation on one of our pubs, where all of our pubs are tenanted, so our margins are incredibly tight. So any small help that we can get to save money helps our bottom line. So part of that, we've got an app that's called Solar Edge. So we're able to see all of the consumption in real-time data. So inside of the kitchens, we've got iPads, and all of the team members are able to see if they turn something on, they can immediately see the impact and also the financial impact. Now, we talk a lot about kind of kilowatts per hour, but that doesn't mean a lot. But if you convert that into the cash value, and then the cash value over a year, that seems to have a much bigger resonance with our team, and then you get a lot more care. So we did a project just sharing that data, pulling that data down, learning where it is, how to get it. Then we've got the app technology, making everybody aware of, okay, you switch that on, that's the impact, that's the financial impact. We had the team really working hard and focusing on that, and we were able to make a 20% reduction over a 2-week period, which in this climate is an absolute huge amount. Solar panels itself, so we've got 48 panels. We are a micro consumer, so we use 100% of everything that's generated from that. The maximum saving that we get out of that building is probably 19% when it's really sunny down in Cornwall. But then, of course, we've got the winter months, and that averages down probably about 11% at this moment in time. When we were doing those costings, we were working around our current unit rates, but now that payback's going to end up doubling.
So we'll come back to getting the team involved in a little while. So the BI, we're very privileged to have over 10,000 members, great operators across the whole of the UK, including such as these chaps here. And part of our role is to try and share that expertise and experience, because undoubtedly someone somewhere in our network has experienced a problem and equally has adapted and done something really smart and clever. So that's part of what we do. But equally, we work with great trusted partners to bring that capability and enablement of some new ways of working. So Tom, so we talked about some lean stuff at the back end, trying to get those costs down. But equally, we know now we have to diversify. We're going to have to grab more revenue from more customers and use pubs in such a more flexible way. So again, how do you use technology to enable more connections to customers, keep them coming in, maybe coming in for different reasons as well?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's really leaning into customer demand, of course. And at Gig Realm, we recently did some market research with a number of operators, small and large, across the UK, looking at their challenges around activating experiences, specifically live experiences, such as putting on music and bands and things, which we all know stereotypically do draw a crowd. But a lot of pubs and operators struggle with how to activate that. If you don't know where to start, if you don't know how to source those musicians, those bands, deal with the more admin side of the contracts, the invoicing, the payments, it becomes a bit of a headache and a bit of a barrier for a lot of pubs out there to be able to activate. And so the research that we did showed that they certainly are challenges, and that technology has a role to play within that. And to be able to actually make it easy and streamlined for those pubs and operators to be able to put that on. But also the research touched on consumers as well, and spoke with a number of consumers across the UK to actually look at, is this something that they would turn up to a pub on a Friday night, but also even midweek? Some of these other days where we could be activating experiences to draw them in and not just rely on weekend trade, essentially, outside of maybe just the food and drink offering that obviously pubs supply. And it was about 80% actually of the consumers that we interviewed and surveyed that were saying they would love to see more of this. And actually one of the main reasons they actually go onto the high street is to see more entertainment, to give them a reason to leave their homes, essentially. And I know, Steve, we spoke about this many a time. It's about giving customers something that makes them want to leave their home, but something they can't replicate at home. A lot of people in the cost of living crisis, as we know, have been obviously looking after the limited budget they have, of course, and thinking about how do I spend that, where do I spend that, and when. And I think that being able to give them that extra reason and something that they can't just put on in their living room, such as a live band, or very unlikely, I mean, some people may, that's a real crowd sort of draw. And the footfall we've seen with the clients and operators that we work with has genuinely gone through the roof. We've seen over 88% increase. This is compared to pre-pandemic, so I'm not going to kind of compare it to that. But pre-pandemic to now, we've seen an 88% increase in terms of the number of gigs and events that are taking place with our clients. And some of them have seen 150% increase in their revenue and their wet sales. So I think that whilst that's great, tech-wise, it's about making sure that it's really simple, that you can put that technology in place. And there are obviously companies like ourselves that provide those solutions so that you can source those musicians, take care of the admin, so that really people who are running the pubs and operators like yourselves perhaps in the room can focus on other areas of business as well and not get bogged down in this.
Right. So one of the challenges is getting out to consumers to say you're doing something different, be that an event, music, sports, or otherwise. And obviously, it's noisy out there to try and cut through. So what have you seen into some smart, simple things you can do to kind of rise above that and make sure people absolutely know you're doing something a bit different?
Yeah, absolutely. So again, from our perspective, using our technology, what it allows is pubs and other forms of venues on the ground to be able to look within their local area for musicians, whether it's a DJ on a Saturday night, whether it's a band on a Friday night, or whether it's an acoustic set that they want on a Wednesday, for instance. And if you look at it from that perspective, being able to identify and find and source local talent in your local area, what that also drives is extra footfall, because those bands that you end up bringing in, or those musicians and acts, will also have their own following. And those followings are very, very loyal. And we talk about loyalty a lot. And if you look at loyalty from their perspective, that's extra footfall of people that are coming through that want to then see them perform in your venues, that will drive that footfall as well. So that's certainly a huge thing that we've started to unlock and start to notice. And a number of our clients have really started to hone in on that. And again, through technology, it should make it simple, and we feel as though we do at Gig Realm, whereby when you look at that band, you see their profile and you can see their social media following as well. So you book a local band or you view them and you go, hey, they've got 1,000 followers on Facebook, they've got 5,000 on Instagram, they've got 20,000 on TikTok, and all it takes is them to put one video up of 1 week performing at your venue and book them again, and I guarantee the next week you'll see them bringing a lot of people that they know that they're performing there.
Great stuff. So going back to technology around consumers. So Mark, from your perspective, so we all, had a very interesting few years. I think our use of technology, our awareness of technology is a lot higher, particularly social media and the online. What's your view on what consumers now expect in terms of online digital information, how you connect with them, etc.? And what are you doing that you think makes the biggest difference? You talked about loyalty, which is key. So maybe just expand on that. But also, how do you talk to them? How do you cut through in this noisy environment that you're trying to compete in?
Wow, that's not an easy question to answer, Steve. I think, as you just said, there's so much noise out there at the moment. There's so many ways to communicate. Getting it right is incredibly difficult. I think for us, it's about, instead of just pumping loads and loads of information out there, it's about trying to really, really understand who our customers are and what they want. And some of that is about identifying different sections of our customer base and delivering a message to them that they're going to bite on. And the way we deliver it, it is different. Sometimes, genuinely, we tend to operate rural pubs. Some of our customers respond best to us putting a leaflet through their door, which is incredible in today's market, but it works, and I could reference that with a direct pickup in revenue in the last 6 weeks. Of course, most of our marketing isn't done that way. So that's what we've worked on. We've got sales and marketing plans that start by identifying who our market is and who our target market is, and how do they typically like to be communicated to. And then we work back from that and say, right, how do we get that message in? Is it through Instagram? Is it through Twitter? Is it by direct mail? Is it through a newsletter? So that's the way we've done it. But we're a small business. We've got 5 pubs, and we're small enough to be able to do that. It's difficult the bigger you get, because you probably do a bit more. You probably do need a bit more of a broad brush approach. But certainly, when you've got a slightly nimbler business, actually you can be a bit sharper in those areas and differentiate across different pubs, which is what we do.
So how do you get the balance right? So you hear these amazing value propositions about pre-book, pre-order, table pay. In a sense, I remember a fantastic operator before really the online kind of review platforms were really the maturity they are. They used to give you a poker chip, and on the way down the stairs there were slots, and it just said, "How was it?" And it said brilliant on one end and rubbish at the other, and you dropped it in. But they looked at every shift, and then suddenly got some instant feedback. And when it gone really well done, guys. And when it had been appalling, and they found what it was and fixed it before it was a long-term issue. So low tech, high tech, getting the balance. So how do you get the balance right? When is it a reality with consumers that they're wanting all this through your eyes, or do you think actually they're not quite there and it's more about the leaflet drops and that more personal type service?
I think it's a blended approach, Steve. Look, it's never been easier to get feedback from customers than it is now, and you can get that in a multitude of different ways across different platforms, online, directly on the day from our teams. And, we put out a survey to everybody that comes to our pubs. We get a massive uptake on them. And if I'm honest, there's a lot of not very helpful information in there, but there are some real nuggets. And, an example last week, someone challenged us on our low and no offering. And I went back and reviewed it and thought, they've probably got a point here. We're probably a little bit behind the market. So that's triggered us into action to make a change, directly on the back of a bit of customer feedback, which I know we wouldn't have found on TripAdvisor or Google reviews or that sort of stuff. So I think, like I say, I think your access to information these days is very, very wide, but you shouldn't get it from one source. That's my opinion. You should try and get it from different sources, because different types of customers want to give you that feedback in different ways. And it's exactly the same when you communicate with them. You have to understand, for me, you have to understand what your target market is. Who is it that you want to attract into this venue? Is it high street? Is it suburban? Is it city centre? And then you've got to make sure that you channel that communication in the right platform or right platforms.
Thank you. So Mark, you touched on involving your team. So around the awareness of data, what was going on in the business, but more broadly, how do you get them using these systems? Because this technology has new ways of working, different skills, and even if you go into the social media world, it can be quite daunting for busy operators who, quite frankly, are working full on, in the business, to take time to think about the subtleties Mark's talking about again the right message at the right time. So how do you use the team? How do you engage them?
Tech and managing change. Wow. Yeah, that's always been the biggest challenge. I think there's so many great ideas, so many great products. You can throw tech at your business, you can throw tech at your team, but how much is actually going to save them time and how much are they going to have the confidence to use is so important. I've thrown handhelds at the teams in the early days. Well, moved systems over to cloud. We use a brilliant EPOS system that's called ICR Touch, who were incredible over that lockdown period of being able to transfer and pivot our business to online takeaway. And during that, we had the capacity to be able to do the handhelds, and there'd be me showing, managing the change. We're going to introduce this and do lots of training on it, lots of videos. You'll end up, putting the handhelds in the individuals' devices, and then 2 weeks later, you see the handhelds still shoved in the drawer still, and you're like, what? Why? And so that is just a constant challenge. We're dealing with 15-year-olds right up to our oldest team member is 82. And one thing that managing change that I've experienced, as soon as you mention tech, people automatically think somebody's going to lose a job or it's a replacement. And it's how do we communicate that to, actually what we're going to try to do is introduce this and give you more time to spend either with the guests or more time for us to spend on the business. So a great example is that is our coffee machines. We played around with traditional barista machines, and you get a little bit more wastage, you get the lack of inconsistency. Found a digital machine which high end of the market, which is called an Eversys machine, who there was the world's champion barista used. And that's an incredible thought. And he did a case study, and he said, actually, what I ended up doing is realizing I wasn't spending time with my guests. And he said, the machine can actually make a better coffee for me. It can actually save me money. It gives me consistency. It helps me with my yield. But the most important thing is it actually supplies me more time to engage with my customers. And that's an incredible thing. That's a world champion barista. So having that of what technology can create more time so that you're more focused on your guests, I think is the absolute key. When we're introducing something, time is critical, particularly for the consumer. We're in the world of Amazon, right? So if you can order a Mother's Day present within 8 hours and it's arriving at the door, or you're in a mass panic, then why can't I have my burger and chips in 20 minutes? And the speed of response is also quite key to us. Looking back when we started the business, and we've now got 3 operations, and it was pretty much me as the sole account admin on all of the social media, and that's just a huge amount to be able to manage. And then you're very protective about that access because you don't want the wrong thing getting put in the wrong place. And so then you would then have individual managers, but then a guest would then message on that, and then you're waiting for them to be in the next day to respond, and all of that. Whereas actually the guest wants to send a message, they want that very quick response to be able to book in, because if they don't get that, they've gone somewhere else immediately. So things like, we've looked at all of that and brought in an application that's called Reputation that helps us with that speed of response, automated responses, updating our listings so it's all in one. They're the type of companies that can be communicating with the big online listing companies like Google. I don't know how the Google bots are working all the time, and what they're tracking of the information to make sure that you stay at the top. But these companies are right there in it, and they adapt their software to kind of help your business to perform better. So I think for me, it's going back to the question around the staff. It is communicating it in a way that ultimately what we're trying to achieve is a better guest experience. Okay. In the back office, there's loads of technology that we put in. All of that technology is how do we save us time? We on the train on the way up, we were sharing apps like Adobe scanning documents. Okay, we just got a receipt. Okay, make sure we don't lose it. Let's scan that. Let's process that into the account system so everything remains real-time information. If you think back in the days of 10 years ago, it would be bags of receipts, and then they go over to your accountant, and then you wait 3 months until you end up getting your financial report, and then by that time you've probably lost 30 or 40 grand in that period. So again, technology that gives you real-time information as well, but also the team real-time information. So really good, having all of our till systems on a cloud system that our kitchen staff members can see how many steaks that they've just served in that last hour or in that service, and they've got access to that in real time is absolutely crucial for our team members, our wastage, our performance, and our time.
Great stuff, thank you. We'll come back to the most important sources of data and what you guys are looking at in real time to make a difference, outside of those comments about categories or whatever, Mark, as well. But from a partner perspective, Tom, what's your advice to operators about getting the best out of partners? Because this stuff will fix the planet, and world peace and all those, because there's a good sales message. But how do you get the best out of, what's the best way to approach a partner to get the best? Because you've got great expertise, great resource. You see amazing best practice of play as well. So just give a few kind of hints and tips about getting the best from it.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a number of suppliers and partners out there, of course, and it is about trying to navigate and cut through the noise and trying to understand which one do I select I've only got a finite amount of budget. I've only got so much time. I've only got so much resource to put behind all of this. And I would say, don't be afraid to challenge us and look at your entire tech stack. So it's kind of saying whether we're talking EPOS, whether we're talking CRM systems, whether we're talking whatever it may be within the back end, where you go, I've got 5 pieces of technology. There's probably a lot more, let's be honest, but there's 5 pieces of technology there. And I would actually quite like them all to talk to one another, because data is key, and we know this. It's what feeds into the loyalty, the retention. It's what makes you able to hyper-focus and target on your customers so that you can really engage with what is important to them. Because what one customer wants around maybe going for Sunday dinner on Mother's Day is not what the Gen Z is looking for around maybe no and low offerings. So there is a clear difference there, and data's key. So I think it's going to partners and suppliers, and whether that's coming to someone like ourselves and saying, I like what I've just heard, entertainment sounds great, I'd love to leverage that. I could see how that can drive footfall and wet sales. But how do I get that connected in with my other systems? How do I leverage that data so that I can then target those customers through my CRM system and my marketing campaigns? A number of us as tech suppliers actually integrate with a number of other tech suppliers. So we work with Airship and Wireless Social and all of these companies that are out there where we can connect the dots. So if you already have a tech stack that's there and you're looking at how do I now bolt something new on and make that easy with the budget you've got and the time, etc., put the ownership on us. Let us help with that. And I think that suppliers and partners have a duty of care to do that. Or if you're starting new, totally from scratch, and you're kind of thinking, I need these new systems. I've got some legacy ones that are in there and I want to actually rip them out. I think coming to at least one of us to start with and saying, I would like to have these 3 things sorted out. I've come to you first. Can you help me engage with these other suppliers and partners so that we can all get around a table, make this work within the budget, the time, and the resource that I have?
Great. Thank you, Tom. So Mark, go back to data. So Tom's described a world where it connects a lot easier than it ever did. So from an operator perspective, what information, what insight are you using now that you didn't used to have that's really able for you to make a difference in the business in more real time?
Probably customer preferences, to be honest. Understanding what, customer walks through the door, what are they going to consume? What day of the week are they there? Are they there lunch? Are they there evening? And, what are they drinking? What are they eating? And analysing that data and using that data to pinpoint initiatives, promotions, just general communications to those specific people, customers, it is very valuable. And actually, we find that our open rates, our click-through rates, and the promotion success or an initiative success is much higher when we target it specifically based on what people are consuming.
So we're going to do a few, hopefully, audience questions, so just warming you guys up. But just in terms of the good things and the bad things, so sometimes the howlers are as informative, and we've all taken a wrong turn, right? So what have you seen what have you used, particularly as operators, that you think actually has made the biggest impact? And what have you tried that, excuse me, you were surprised actually just didn't work, because some things just don't? So, what's your biggest success and what's your howler that you've learned from? Mark?
Oh, cloud systems, great success. Being able to everyone to have access to everything, whether that's invoices and bits and pieces, and also kind of learning. I think through the years, I've learned not to get tied down into long-term contracts. Okay, which is really key. So technology just changes so freaking fast. And PDQ machines are an absolute prime example. The guys, right here, Dojo, we just recently moved over to those guys. We use a till system, which that integrates into. It's a lot quicker. It's a lot slicker. We haven't got a large tie down into that contract. It's speedier for the customer, and also we're using less paper. Okay, so going back when we started the business, and I was looking at new PDQ machines, I kind of tied myself very naively into a long-term contract without really realizing that I had done that, and it costs an awful lot of money to be able to renegotiate out of that contract to get better technology inside of the business. So I think that's the one thing that, I have learned. Probably the downsides where I've made failures is not spending enough time with the team on implications. And making sure that you've got the right expertise around you on install and training. It's very easy to kind of get something set up. We've got lots of other things to do. It's kind of, that's all working. We'll show a couple of people, hopefully rely on them to pass that information on to everybody else. And then ultimately it then falls down or, again, gets put back in the drawer, for example. So those are the key things that I've learned.
So just build on one point just before you finish, Mark. So we get a lot of feedback from operators around the cost of change, the nervousness that actually, so short-term contracts, great, technology evolves, but how difficult is it? Because sometimes it's dismissed and people stick with things because they fear it's going to be a lot of hassle and time and they haven't got it because they're really busy in the business right now. But what's your experience of increasingly how easy it is to change systems, be it POS or booking systems or whatever?
If you ask the right question, it can be pretty easy. But it's actually taking the time out to ask that question. We were talking on the stage yesterday about cello equipment. So we've just upgraded our cello equipment with our remote coolers, which were only 3 years old. Okay, I asked the question, is there any new technology that is available or any brand new remote coolers that are going to save me money or save me energy? And the answer was, well, yeah, there is. Okay? Had I not asked that question, then we would not have a brand new cello install and be saving probably in excess of £2,900 just off of the back of that one question. Is there any new modern technology that can replace what I've already got that's going to be more efficient and ultimately save me time and money?
Great. So, Mark, just before we go to Tom, so biggest success, biggest howler?
I think, look, we've adopted certain bits of technology that haven't worked in the past. Doesn't mean they are bad bits of technology, because they're not. One was around signing up data, and one was around feedback from customers. They just didn't work. They just didn't make a difference to us. Didn't make enough of a difference to us. And I think Mark is absolutely spot on, by the way. With the fact that software and technology nowadays is so different to what it was a few years ago. And generally, if it's good enough and it works, you don't need a contract. A rolling subscription is fine because you'll never take it out. And also, you talk about things being sticky. They become so integrated into your business that you don't want to take them out anyway because they're a headache. So we've definitely had bits that haven't worked, and I don't think you should be. Look, as an operator, just be honest with yourself. Is it working? Is it making a difference? If it isn't, don't stick with it. And we've had plenty of those. And I think there's also a case that there is so much tech out there, you can have too much of it. And you can spend your life looking at things that actually are not making enough of a difference. And you can get so wrapped up in tech that it almost becomes, your teams almost become anxious about it. So for me, it's about, really testing, is this making a big difference to us? Look, we've got some great bit of technology that we use for our labour scheduling now. It makes an enormous difference. We can analyse it to the nth degree. All of our GMs use it. As directors, we like looking at it. It really helps. We review it weekly. It's real time. It makes a big difference. I think for me, there are some. That's probably the biggest thing I would go with is and I know. We've got S4 Labour there. I know that's not who we use, but I know there are lots of other good bits of technology that exists just on labour management and scheduling. So for us, it's always been about starting with what the need is, how big is the problem to solve, and what a difference is it going to make to me, to our bottom line, to our teams, to our customers, and try and prioritise it in that order.
Thank you. So, Tom, apart from clearly Gig Realm is the most innovative and impactful technology anybody could buy, you see so much stuff. So what have you seen that you think is really, as Mark says, making a real difference? And what have you seen that actually is just wasted time and really hasn't moved forward the customer journey or the business?
I think it's easier to answer the first part really, which where I'm seeing sort of big difference is those tech companies that are able to integrate more. I mentioned it earlier, but essentially that are more agile and that can actually accommodate and be a bit more bespoke to your business, your challenges and your needs. And I totally agree with what the guys have said, especially around how quickly technology moves on. And putting tech in for the sake of tech is probably not the right thing, let's be honest. It is about identifying the challenges, as Mark just said, what are those pain points, and then navigating the conversation from there. That's really where it has to start. It's not just shoehorning it in for the sake of it. And I think that where companies that we've worked with and our partners, our wider sort of tech partners have worked with, where they started with that, that's where we've seen the major successes. And also just to Matt's point as well around this kind of training, etc. as well, I think there's also been great success there where when tech providers have stepped in and said, we are meant to be the experts, so let us take that burden on. We're not expecting to land this in, train one person up in your team, and then they've now got to roll it out across all of the pubs that you've got, because it can again fall flat, and they've got a day job as well, let's be honest. So I think that it's starting with the challenges, making sure that those tech solutions that can go on the monthly subscription, that rolling subscription thing, I totally agree with that. You don't need long-term contracts in that sense. If it works, it should work and you'll keep it. And I think that's where the successes are. And I think then you can kind of take that point and go, well, what's the negative? Where hasn't it worked? It hasn't worked, I think, with certain suppliers that have gone more aggressive in terms of 3-year type deals that are going to maybe lock you in, but then there's no hand-holding, that consultancy, that ongoing support, the check-ins, the extra training, but also then updating their technologies as well, because there are suppliers out there we know that will maybe kind of sit on that contract and maybe won't update their technology because they're great for the next 3 years. I'm not saying there's many of them, but they do exist. And so I think that keeping us on our toes is important. And us bringing new solutions that keep adding value. And you've got to see that it adds value. I mean, just from our side, we will provide ROI reports, forecasting spreadsheets and reports and dashboards and all of that stuff from operators on a national scale wanting to understand their entire expenditure around entertainment, right through to an independent that is just looking at purely wanting to know what invoices have I basically spent, on this talent over the last month, and that's all I care about. So you've got to be able to adapt, and I think that's where you'll see the success.
Great, thank you. So before we start to close off the session, and I'll come back to these guys for some pearls of wisdom to leave you with. Any questions from the audience? Gentlemen here, here you go.
Yeah, thanks for the panel, by the way. So just a question about staff training. Did you implement anything, new tech or tech that you're thinking about implementing about staff training from, entry level to manager levels? Yeah.
Great question. So I think technology and training, we are about to see some amazing stuff that is coming out. We've got lots of online training platforms that we use, and that just covers a lot of our due diligence inside of the background. There's lots of providers that are around. I was very lucky to attend the BII People's Conference, and inside of there they had a 3D AI welding session where you put your goggles on and then there's virtual welding that were going on, which is changing their industry because it's saving money, it's helping with health and safety. The kids are just like, wow, I want a piece of that and now I want to be a welder. And there's all of that type of technology that will start to be introduced as training into our businesses, or particularly our providers are going to have it available. But for us and our team, you've got to think about what's right for the individual. Okay, so are you going to get the best output out of somebody who hates computers, doesn't know how to turn them on, and you want to sit them in front of one to do a 4-hour personal license trainer? They're probably going to hate you and probably leave the business. And so sending them into a face-to-face training program is going to benefit them better. So, yeah, the great stuff that is available. There's really innovative stuff around training that is happening at this moment in time. But just be cautious. Think about that individual. It's all about that social mobility stuff, isn't it? Okay, if they can't access or can't get to the training, then is that the right place to have that training? Okay.
Good question. Any more questions from the audience? No, thank you for that. Oh yeah, one here.
Hi there, thanks very much. It's for Mark Robson, actually, because voltage management. I just wondered what the issues that you'd experienced with it were, because that's what we're involved in and what we do for lots of pubs and hotels. So if there have been any issues, I'd be quite keen to know what your experience was.
Okay, sorry, you install that, do you, across pubs, or? So I think just as a general point, I've never ever put anything into our business tech related and there not be an element of pain involved. Sometimes it's at the lower end of the thresholds and sometimes it's at the higher end of the thresholds. Sometimes we've probably got things slightly wrong. Most of the time, I'd say it's an implementation or teething issues with implementation. And they happen. And I think nowadays, we just prepare ourselves for the fact that, there will always be teething issues. And so we implement things earlier in the week. We do it site by site. We test it. On the voltage management side, actually, the biggest issues we had were, again, people putting in various differing sizes of boxes into our pubs. They've got to be done when the power's turned off. So immediately you're talking about overnight. Turning up, not necessarily having all the right equipment or missing a part. So those sort of practical elements of it. And then, we tested everything when they've been put in. The EV chargers wouldn't work. And, and that wasn't something I'd considered, that the EV chargers as far away from where the power comes into the building, the voltage had dropped into probably about 217 at those points, and that was an issue. And we tested everything else in the pub, just forgot to test them, so we had to work with our EV supplier to do that. But we resolved it. I think like actually with the voltage management, so I'm a really big advocate of it. A lot of it just comes down to people communicating with you in the right way, being really organised, having a really good plan. And as a customer, buying a product or a service from a supplier is highly frustrating when it doesn't happen quite the way you want it to. So, really basic, really. I mean, those fundamental issues don't go away, even though tech has evolved and improved and is making a big difference in all our lives. So, having said that, it was a little bit painful, but now it's in, and I can really see the differences, and we can see the savings, and we look on them to validate the savings we're getting at each unit. Really happy with it.
Great, thank you. So last 30 seconds, so one big takeaway, I think you've touched on loads of these things, but you had to pick one, Tom. What would your advice to operators be when to try and tackle this topic?
Yeah, I think it's just looking at the overall tech stack that you have and figuring out, can they connect, can you share that data, can you leverage that data, and leaning on those suppliers and partners to help you with that.
Walk around your business, analyse it, what potentially needs upgrading and when. I think when was the last time that you actually evaluated, is there something out there that can do a better performance and save you money and time from what you've already got?
Yeah, so totally agree with that. Just taking a slightly different angle on it, I would say rely on your network of other operators in the industry, and some of whom will have already adopted such technology, and ask them, what were the teething issues? Has it made a difference? And get them to validate it before you put it in.
Great, thank you. And we'll continue to promote the expertise of amazing operators through things like BI News, our online information we push out every single week as well. These guys will be around for a little while. If there's any questions, a gig realm are with our BI pavilion just over there. So you want to go and chat with Tom and the guys. But really appreciate your time this morning. Thank you.